So there are a few more weeks until the upcoming Spider-Man PS4 title gets released, which is of course planned for the 7th of September, and there are tons of trailers, interviews and information out there. For those who didn't have time to check them all out, in today's video I'll go over everything we know so far about this game, from the story itself to the actual gameplay and more. So I hope you all sit comfy in your chairs and let's get to it. Starting up with the story, the new Spider-Man video game will be set in an entirely new universe and won't be connected to the one from the movie. During a behind closed doors interview with Insomniac's community director, it was confirmed that this entry ditches out the origin story completely that most of the previous reboots did, and instead will tell the story of a more established 23-year-old Peter Parker. This new entry will focus on Peter Parker as much as it will on Spider-Man, and will pick things off right around the time he graduates from college. At this point in time, he's been filling his role as Spider-Man for the past 8 years, taking out various of his iconic enemies, including Wilson Fisk. In fact, in a recent gameplay showcase, it was confirmed that the fight with the Kingpin serves like some kind of a tutorial area, and it helps set up the rest of the story, as in the unintended consequences of leaving room for a new gang to move in and take control. You've probably seen the first few trailers showing the Inner Demons gang starting to make their move on Fisk's territories after Spider-Man got in behind bars. We had the gameplay sequence of Spidey fighting the demons at one of Fisk's construction sites, showcasing various fight mechanics, and towards the end it was then when we find out that Martin Lee, a well-known business leader and philanthropist in New York City, is behind them under the alias of Mr. Negative. These are of course not the only enemies in the game right now, and up until now many more were shown, and it's believed that there's still more to come, or at least have been hinted towards. I've already mentioned Mr. Negative, and there was a chase sequence in which Spidey is following him in a helicopter while trying to keep folks on the ground safe. He seems to be playing a huge role, as you end up seeing him later in other missions as well. We also saw Herman Schultz, aka the Shocker, during a bank robbery. He's seen using his iconic powers to send shockwaves from his gloves, which deal significant damage to the structures. Of course, Spider-Man eventually stops him and puts him behind bars once more. In one of the missions on the Rikers Island, Spidey has to chase down Electro as he proceeds to free every criminal locked up in there in the maximum security prison, eventually freeing Rhino, Vulture and Scorpion as well. They all team up in trying to kill Spidey, but towards the end we're left with a cliffhanger as a sixth member also makes an appearance, probably hinting towards either the Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus. So yeah, the Sinister Six is definitely hinted here, though it's slightly changed compared to the comics, as Mr. Negative is also part in it while he was not in the comics. So yeah, we also don't know who the sixth character is. Speaking of Green Goblin, in this universe Norman Osborn is running for mayor of New York and is in full campaign, which is why most people tend to believe he wouldn't have the time to put in any work to become the Green Goblin and do other side activities on top of his campaign, which kinda leaves only Doc Ock as an option, especially since all of the other villains seems to have a lot of tech going on them, and it could be the only explanation, as in Dr. Octopus or Octavius being the only option here left, and yeah, pretty much that. Nonetheless, it was shown many times that Spider-Man isn't doing this hero thing all alone, and that he actually has help from his friends. So we had Mary Jane, who works at the Daily Bugle as a journalist, helping out with investigations and playing a big part in the overall story development. In fact, there's even gameplay sequences in which she's a character you can play with. It seems like she's filling the role of a detective where you need to find a lot of secrets and all of that kind of stuff. Similarly, there's also moments where you can play as Peter Parker, but that's only in select missions only, so not in free roam. You won't be able to free roam with Peter Parker, only as Spider-Man. Speaking of side characters, Aunt May is also here working in one of Lee's shelters, and it's possible that our actions in this world will affect the characters in this game. So to give you an example with the Aunt May, she's an employee of Mr. Negative. Of course, she doesn't know this, but when you take him out, this is also going to affect her. So it's gonna be interesting to see how your actions in this world affect the people around you. But now that you have a rough outline of what the story is, it is time to move on to the actual gameplay. And as a side note, I will say that everything I've seen so far looks spectacular. Of course, no pun intended. To make things easier to follow, I'll split this part into several sections, starting with the world itself. So much like how most of the previous entries in the Spider-Man universe were, this one makes no exception and is also an open world game set up in the city of New York. The map is of course much bigger than how it was in the previous titles, with Manhattan being the main area, and you'll be spending most of your time over here. Some of the locations that have been shown are the urban areas with all of the skyscrapers packed. We have Central Park, a lot of the small neighborhoods like Chinatown, and it's not yet clear if crossing the bridges is also a possibility, though I'd assume it is, at least in part, for example when going back to Peter's house. Also, it seems that you can use the subway in this game, which is of course awesome. There's some kind of quick travel, though I'm not sure how much we'll use it because it's way more fun to just swing around town, but we'll talk about swinging a little bit later. You'll find plenty of interiors you'll be able to run through. Not sure if something like that is only in story missions or you can do it in open world gameplay as well, but you will be able to interact with civilians, and that is a possibility. You will be able to take photos with them, sign autographs, or just talk. Killing civilians is not a possibility though, as that would be very un-Spider-Man like, but you might occasionally be attacked by somebody who doesn't agree with what you're doing, case in which you're more than able to protect yourself. There also seems to be rooftop parties where you can totally crash in and hang around with folks. There's an in-game social media, and Spider-Man even has his own fan page with millions of people, and depending on your actions there will be consequences to how people perceive you. I don't expect for this to swing too much into the dark side where Spider-Man could become all evil or something like that, but probably just enough to make the world feel a little bit more believable. Since I mentioned web swinging, this is one of the things that fans are most picky about. Of course, it is all physics based in this game for the most part, and webs realistically attached to buildings from where you continue to swing. This is done by pressing the R2 button on your controller, which will make Spidey attached to the nearest building, and releasing the button will make him release the line. Holding down R2 will also make him run across walls or perform parkour while on the ground. Of course, this sounds simple enough, but there's a ton of stuff that needs to be taken into account, like when to release the time, adjusting the trajectory, and all of these play a major role on how you traverse the city. A lot of people have said it's quite easy to pick up, but feels very rewarding when you get the hang of it. The X button is your designated jump button and is also useful for zipping over a roof, but also for angling around corners. Pressing down both trigger buttons will let you shoot a freely targeted line that will bring you to whatever you're aiming at, and this seems to be most useful for scaling buildings quickly. From what I've seen so far, the zipping in general looks very fun and acrobatic. There are tons of animations put together to make it feel that way, and the general consensus of those who managed to play the demo was that it's really easy to pick off, but there is a learning curve and time to get used to it, and when you combine it all up, it will make swinging feel like a very rewarding experience. You've already probably seen various open world gameplays with Spidey moving across the map in all sorts of ways. He's swinging and zipping from one building to another, jump boosting from surface to surface, and handling the tight corners using his web. So all in all, I'm pretty excited to see this because the web swinging just looks absolutely perfect. Moving on to the combat, it seems Spider-Man borrowed a few elements from the Batman Arkham series, and the style looks quite similar at first glance, and I'm actually pretty happy for that because the combat in the Batman Arkham series is like really good. I really liked it, but you'll soon realize though that it's a beast of its own and there's a ton more acrobatics being involved here. Spider-Man can punch, he can kick, throw enemies in the air and use his webs to pull them, throw them or immobilize them. We'll even be able to use the environment to our advantage by either picking up objects from the ground and smashing them in the enemy's face, or using walls to boost you into them for even bigger hits. Like in the traditional style of most games of this type, we also have finisher moves when enemies are low on health, so you'll be able to pull some cool stuff off when they are really low on health. Stealth gameplay is also a possibility, and I'm finally glad to say that it looks pretty good. In previous Spider-Man games you could do some stealth gameplay like the one in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, but it always felt extremely clunky and the camera control was just unbearable to deal with. In this game though, you'll be able to swiftly and quietly move around the unsuspecting foes and zip them by the leg when they expect the least. Of course, this still depends on how enemies are grouped up and you'll generally have to stay outside of their line of sight, but it generally feels rewarding and you can more quickly and easily deal with large groups if you plan your attacks carefully. You can even use the environment Spider-Man to drop huge crates on multiple enemies, which kind of reminds me of Assassin's Creed a little bit. There's also a charge meter that lets you use an ultimate ability when it's filled, and it all depends on the spider suit that you've unlocked. So far I've seen the Web Blossom ability being used, and it lets Spidey jump in the air, throw webs all around him, though I'm not sure from which suit this originates. An addition that I have yet to see in any of the previous Spider-Man games is that you can now also have various gadgets. In fact, you'll quickly realize Spidey has more gadgets than Batman himself. So far we've seen the tripwire, which can attach to a wall, and when an enemy comes in sight, it shoots a web and drags him into it, immobilizing them in the process. There's also a web bomb, which is used to take a group of foes quickly, especially if they're dumb enough to stay close to each other. This is also a nice way to wrap them up nicely like presents for Christmas. These are not all the available gadgets, of course. There's also the spider drone you can use, and it will shoot more webs at your enemies while flying around. It's all cool, and I cannot wait to see what we have in the game. I'm not sure if these are all, but I'm pretty sure that there should be more on top of these, and you'll be able to either craft them or unlock them somehow. Nonetheless, Spidey seems more equipped than ever to take down his foes. Speaking of being equipped, you'd be pleased to know that there are at least a few dozen available Spider-Man suits that you'll be able to unlock through the game. The game starts with the classic suit and ends up being torn up in a fight with the Kingpin. Soon after that, you'll be able to unlock more by leveling up and crafting them using various tokens you find throughout the game. We already know the 3 pre-order ones, which are Noir, Velocity and Spider-Punk, but there are many more on top of these. Like a few days or a week ago, it was confirmed that there's like at least 25 suits in the game and possibly even more beyond of that, and it covers a lot of them, so you'll be able to fit in any role. You'll be able to have most of the desired suits that you're probably looking forward to. Personally, I would definitely love to have the Venom suit, but I'm not sure that's gonna be available in the game. Again, Venom was not confirmed in the game. In fact, it was pretty much the opposite, and this gameplay will not have that. Probably in a sequel or something like that. Nonetheless, there are enough suits for you to have fun with. And compared to the previous installments, it now plays a huge role in the game, and you'll most probably want to craft and upgrade your suits more as you level up and prepare for certain fights and enemies. Also, rest assured that the pre-order ones will also be unlockable in the game, so you don't have to actually pre-order the game. If you don't want to, you can wait for reviews and then buy it. You will be able to unlock these 3 suits as well. It's just that it's going to be probably a little bit later into the game. Otherwise, there's no microtransactions, there's nothing additional you have to buy, probably just the DLC. I'm not really sure. I've personally purchased the Digital Deluxe, or actually I've pre-ordered it, and I'm pretty sure all of these are included. So yeah, this is pretty much all we know so far about the upcoming Spider-Man PS4 video game. It's been in development for quite some time, and it was first announced like a couple of years back. Of course, since then it's been through various changes. You've seen a lot of changes, and not just the graphics and like the visuals in general, but also the UI, and I'm expecting a little bit more on top of that. The game also went gold like last month, so it's definitely gonna be on the 7th of September. There's no way it's gonna be postponed or anything, and I cannot wait to play it. For those who don't know, it's only available on the PS4, so unfortunately to the PC players and to the Xbox One players, this is not a title that you will be able to play. This is a PS4 exclusive, and yeah, it's gonna be like this for the time being. As a matter of fact, I believe that most of the games that Insomniac developed were and are on the PlayStation, well, except for Sunset Overdrive, which was on the Xbox. So yeah, pretty much that. But this is all that we have for today. This was all the info currently available. Well, generally all the info, because there are a lot of tidbits here and there that we could go over. Tell me if you want me to do that. Tell me if you want me to cover more of Spider-Man, because I will definitely do it. I've already pre-ordered this game quite some time ago, and I am super excited to play it. Of course, I am a huge fan of both Insomniac, as I've played the Ratchet & Clank series when I was young, and I've played Spider-Man and enjoyed the franchise ever since I was a child. So yeah, these two put together is definitely a yes to me, and I'm pretty sure this is gonna be a freaking amazing game. So again, if you enjoyed this video, then a like and a subscribe would be super appreciated. Also, do not forget to activate the notification button, and I will see you guys in the next one.